Hey guys, it's Blondie. Welcome to my channel. So today we're getting in the spooky season spirit and we're going to be making some jack-o'-lantern cake pops. I used to make cake pops all of the time. They are a bit of a pain. So the first thing that you're going to need to make these is going to be a cake mix. Now you can go ahead and make one from scratch, but I think it's just so much easier to just use a box, and most professional bakeries actually also use box cake mix for cake pops. So this is what I'm going to do, but if you want to go ahead and make a cake batter, go for it. The next thing is very similar. We're going to be using a canned frosting. The reason why we're using canned frosting is because if you go and you make a batch of frosting, you're going to have so much left over because we'll use the full box of the cake, but for the frosting we're only going to use about 2 spoonfuls, so that's not very much at all, and it would just be such a waste to just make a full batch of frosting. This is very important. You want to make sure that you have a high quality chocolate because the chocolate is really the star of the show. So I have a milk chocolate, which you can use for the face of the jack-o'-lantern, or you could also use food coloring, but you want to make sure that you're using a gel food coloring for the chocolate, otherwise it's going to curdle and it's not going to work. So I don't know which one I'm going to do yet, but we'll see. So we've got white chocolate. You're going to need a lot of white chocolate because you're going to be dipping them in orange chocolate, which is going to be the white chocolate, and then you're going to be using it for the face on it as well. You could also get orange chocolate wafers. I couldn't find any near me, so I just went with this and hoping it's going to be easy to use these food colors. I've never used these before, this specific brand at least, but we'll see how it goes. Then, of course, the most important part is going to be your cake pop sticks. Now, usually I get them in like a bulk package from like Michael's, but I didn't get these from Michael's. I got them from an actual bakery store. So you want them to be about this size in length. This is a pretty good size. They're a little long. You could actually probably do it a little bit shorter than this if you wanted to. I'll just show you up close. You want it to be a decent thickness. You don't want them to be too flimsy. I also got these bottles that I'm going to be using to pour the chocolate in and melt it to do the base. Now, if you've never made cake pops before, this one is going to sound pretty random, but you're going to be needing a styrofoam block, and that's because after you dip the cake pop, you're going to be sticking it in here so it can harden. Now, this isn't as important, but if you want to package them up, maybe give them to people, these cute cake pop bags, and I got this super cute Halloween ribbon. Let's get our aprons on and get ready for baking. So while I mix this, I'm just going to make sure that my oven is preheating. I'm using confetti because it's just what I have, but I would recommend using the Halloween confetti. I think it'd be perfect for this. Okay, so this one's going to call for 1 1/4 cup of water. Perfect. It's right at the line. So we're just going to pour that in. Sorry about that. And then we need a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And I actually really lucked out because I just realized I don't have eggs, but I do have egg whites, and this recipe calls for egg whites, so that's perfect. I'm just gonna go in and just really want to get all of those clumps out. Normally I would use a stand mixer for this, but it's just, I don't know. I don't think it really needs it. Looks like we've got most of the clumps out. Okay, so now we've got to prep our pan. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we spray this really good because we don't want to stick. You can use whatever size pan works best for you. I'm just gonna use this one because it's the biggest one that I have. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that in. It's good. 10 out of 10. Okay, so now we've just got to finish waiting for our oven to preheat, and we're going to put it in for the amount of time that it says on the box. Okay guys, so now that this is cool, I'm going to put on some gloves and I'm going to mix it with some frosting. Now, you can also use a standard mixer for this. I just prefer using my hands. I don't really want to dirty a bowl for no reason. So, what you can do is you can cut off the edges if they're a little crispy. So like mine are a little bit crispier. So, let's go. So we're gonna go in. This also just makes it look better because it gets rid of any darkness that would show up in the cake pops. But if you don't really care, you can leave it. I'm just gonna cut it because mine are a little bit crispy. Sometimes if the top of your cake is also darker than you would like, you can also cut that off as well. Or the bottom, you can see the bottom line's dark, but I don't mind that, it's okay. So you're just gonna break this up. And you wanna make sure it's fully cooled down before you do this, otherwise it's just gonna not hold as well on the stick, and that's just gonna cause problems. So you don't want that. Better to just do it in sections like this. I'm just gonna do about that much to start, so not a ton. I'm just gonna mix that in. And you're basically just looking for it to be a dough, but you don't want a sticky dough. You want a dough that's like, can hold its shape, but isn't going to again, be like super sticky or fall off the stick or anything like that. You're being tested. Yeah, I think we could use a little bit more frosting, not a ton. We'll just do like that much. Okay, so now this has to go in the refrigerator. So this is how mine looks. This is I dropped some. This is the consistency. Okay guys, so I've had this refrigerating for about a day now, just because I didn't really have time to finish it. So I'm just gonna unwrap this, and we're also going to be warming up some chocolate. So you can see this is pretty good consistency. It's actually perfect. And then for the chocolate, I'm not going to be coloring it for this part just because there's no point in wasting food coloring right now. But we're not going to need a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this in here. And I'm going to heat this up in 15-second increments and stir it every 15 seconds. You want to be really careful because you don't want it to burn. And white chocolate burns easier than dark chocolate. Now we're going to begin with shaping. So I just have a scoop here that I'm going to use just because I want them to all be the same size. You can just go based off of what you think looks right. It doesn't all have to be perfect. But you don't want to put too much pressure on it because you don't want to see it crack. I'm just going ahead and smoothing out any cracks that I see. Trying to get it pretty round. But once you have a round ball, so now we're going to take one of our sticks and we are just going to go around the edges and add these lines to kind of make it look more like a pumpkin. It's a little bit tricky. I've never done this before. Okay, so this didn't turn out perfect, but I'd say it looks pretty good. Now if you want to go ahead and just make sure you have those grooves pretty deep so that the chocolate doesn't hide them, you can go ahead and do that. Definitely takes some practice. But now we have our foam block here and we're going to pick what side we want the bottom to be, dip our stick in some chocolate, and just go ahead and stick that right in there. You want to put it in pretty far, but you just don't want it to go through the other end. So, let's see right here, got the perfect pumpkin. And honestly, for this part, you could honestly set these on a plate like this because the top of the pumpkin doesn't need to be super round. But I'm just going to go ahead like this just so you can see what you usually do. I'm just gonna stick it in there and let it harden. Once we have them all done, they're gonna go in the freezer and we're gonna freeze them so that it's easier to work with them. So I'm just gonna repeat that step for all of them. So after I stuck these in the freezer, I actually accidentally dropped all of them. So I had to redo this whole thing. So for the next step, you're going to see that the dough looks more yellow. It's just because I used a yellow cake mix, but I did the exact same things to make it. So now I just used my leftover white chocolate and I added some more to it to melt it, and I'm adding the orange food coloring until I get the desired color for the pumpkins. And then this is going to be used to do the main coat of the cake pops. So when you dip these, you just want to make sure you're not being too aggressive with them because they will slide off the stick if you are. So you also want to make sure that you're just doing a really thin coat because if it is too thick, that will also weigh the cake pop down and cause it to slide off the stick. So you just want to make sure your chocolate's really thin and smooth and slowly dip it and try and get any excess off without being too aggressive with it. So after that first layer has cooled, you're going to put a second layer on, and this is how mine look after the second layer. I just added some black food coloring into the orange chocolate so that we didn't waste it, and this is going to be used to make the face. So after you've poured it into your little bottles, you can do whatever you want for the faces.
I think it worked best to do one section at a time and then lay them down so that the chocolate didn't drip. But I did the eyes first and then I moved on to the mouth and the stem. And yeah, you can just kind of do whatever you want with these. So I'm actually super happy with how these turned out. I think they are adorable and perfect for the spooky season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Happy Halloween!